That's it. That's it.
Chawani de Chula Nishita in Basamudil, Chawani than the Bene Chu, London Tabatin, Yakan Karisia Gore, shaking Karisia Marba, Tajaba Damagun to Homachita Tajimba. Tangas was Jaba Damagun to Homachita Tajimba Hotel Hedio Marba, Tala Lajis of Senior Temple, then the Lucheta Janama Nije, Senior to Taji, that and then the Lucheta Janatala. Ni marbeta yidala hebela bishkuwa hebela sunguchi ta yidala hebela bishkuwa dla tawa ngozo wata ni ba kawa samba twenchwa samba sun tu tachi ta tan hebela sungu dla karsure soro kasa
tingama
sajini did marbero
she lying sawa she lying
what is Naji Najalanga Bachebata, Himmel Sungo, Naji Najalanga Bachebata, Nimarbe, Jebusonji Land to Sura Taji Duvas, Jebusonji going to tribute since Haji need or to Sarwa, Tan Himmel and Sungo, the Latana to Jebuchunka to Len Marbe, what the Katula could what the Larita ancient could then grow.
So this one.
Okay.
So once again we will be looking at the text called "The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment" by Lama Tsongkhapa. This text is a commentary on Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, and it begins with an outline of the content to come. So Lama Tsongkhapa presents four categories of the which are an outline of the material. The first category, which Lama Tsongkhapa goes over, is the greatness of the teaching's author. Here this is referring to Lord Atisha, and we find the liberation life story of Lord Atisha in that section, which we've already gone over. The second category is the greatness of the teaching itself. This teaching we're referring to is the lamp for the path to enlightenment. There are four greatnesses mentioned, and basically it includes all of the pronouncements of Lord Buddha contained in the Kangjur and the authentic Indian commentaries, or the Tengjur. So this is the second, the greatness of the teaching itself. The third is the great way to listen to and explain the teachings. And here this section deals with how a student should listen to the teaching, the appropriate way for a student to listen. And secondly, how the teacher should present the teaching, so the appropriate way to give the presentation or to give the teaching. So this is the third section rather. The fourth section is how to lead students in stages through the instructions. So that's the fourth category, and that's the section that we're dealing with right now. And the first category under how to lead students in stages through the actual instructions deals with how to rely on the teacher that is the root of the path. And then the second category is what one does once the stages of training the mind once one has relied upon the teacher. So those are the first two categories. And that second category, which is the stages of once one has relied upon the teacher, stage of the path that one engages in once one has relied upon the teacher, has two categories. An exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and then secondly, how to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. And under the exhortation of to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity, we find the categories of how all teachings are included within the teachings of beings of three capacities, the great importance of the teaching. I'm sorry, I apologize. The first is the identification of a life of leisure and opportunity. The second is the great importance of a life of leisure and opportunity. And the third is the difficulty of obtaining a life of leisure and opportunity. So this is under the category of the exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. The next category, under that category of how one trains one mind after having relied, is how to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity. And then under that category, we find two categories, is how to develop certain knowledge of a general presentation of the path, and then the second category of how to actually take advantage of that life of leisure and opportunity. And in that first category, the general presentation of the path, we find that first category of how all teachings are included within the stages of the path for beings of three capacities. And then the second category, which is the reason and purpose for leading students through stages for beings of three capacities. So we've gone over all of that. And then the next category, how to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, is where we currently are. And that begins with the commonality, the presentation of for being shared in common with beings of small, medium, and great capacity, beginning with where we are. The teachings for beings of small capacity are shared in common with beings of small capacity. So this is the section that we're on. I believe it's on 144 in the English text. And it's the actual way to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. And then the first category is training the mind, the stages of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity. So that's where Rinpoche stopped. Okay. Jibu Chung O Lefson.
Oh, yeah. That Jibu Chung Saji the Song Rendo Song, that Jeremy, Sayu Saji no Song. So the Takaso, Nibelan Sungo de la Sonchi, Jibu Chung Tang, Jibu Chung La Lojamba. Lojamba Tang, Dina Tung La Lojamba, Jibu Chimi La Jirimba Lojamba, Saji Sonje, Nibelan Sungo. That London Tunda Amatawa to Timber. Son Rendo Son. That Dambula Son, that Chungro, that Chung did the Chuchu, Jefferson Shevaja, Chungo, that Chungo Dan, Tomo and Samba Lojanwatala, the Saji Son Dickendua. Chungo Samba Jan, Samba the Chibi, Tela Ludo Gaba, Loberto Gabas, Loberto Sales, Marbe. 다 중국 상바 정은 대제비체 중국 상바 다 제대 셔마 되네지 상로 정하된 바 딱한테 능아서 주디시에 대하게 드르랑테 인자마르베 저와 셔마 사도미 대상 도나냐베 상로들 정하야데 제비 중국 상바 정하세도 비제 인자마르베 제대 셔마 와데지 다드네 다 제대 셔마를 된도 가수래 와제 Samba Jong said what the J. That somebody Jibby says, and that Jibby Chung and somebody Jibby said, Tangas and Dinkatula de Udua. Tangas Nise good to Tabatania Lucian, Shona the singing Jibalas, Lanzo Nason Water, and young somebody. Nise good and Tabatanielo, Shona the singing Jibal, and young somebody said, Lanzo Jijagadua. What the Naji, Nisen Gundo, Jawa Shama Dendu Tona, San Lote, and Nisen Good to Yogundona, and Jebuchung San Lot, Jib Ceres, Pishi Water Dabin, somebody Jib said, Tella Lobatuba Sawas, that to show the Dubaji, Tubat Kaba in Jere. Tatombo, Chung Samba Jong, the La. Jiden Shama Duneji Lojeba Dang, Jiden Shama Duneji Lojeba Dang, Jiden Shama di Totaba Marbe. Jiden Shama Sana, Jawa Shamas and Jiba Marbe. Jiden Shama Duneji Lojebas. That Jawa Shama Latami, Teno Tunanabe, San Lutele, Shaya, San Lutia, Watermando. Jiden Shama Duneji Lojeba. Jiden Shama Duneji Lojeba Dang, Nukasa. Jiden Shama di Totem was. Jiden Shama Latami, Tenzon Tunanabe, San Lutisha Kitchibris. Jiden Shama Latami, Tenzon Tune, Dua Yumbala, and the Duatan Debure, Julatin Chigure, Jo and Jo Guaduba. Guaduba ina, what the Jiden Shama di Torres. Jo, Tautan Jo, what the Insamarbe. Jiden Shama di Totem was. Nije. 다 담보라 니 지된 되면 좀 remember 처와 제수 템바스 다 처음 타바 우아딘 사만베 지된 되면 좀 remember 처와 제수 템바 공부하다 안에 Jine Shema, Duani Chitu Sambas, the Shene, Jawal Satel, Dendu and Yima to Marva, Dendo. Dengandul Jina Dunga you are, Dendul Jina, Dua you are, what they could lend on lended to Guatin Samarba.
Lesser.
Jine Shema, Dua Dudu, Jine Shema, Duani Chitu Samba Hosa. Tangan Sul Jena Dunga, Dendul Jina Dua, you have treated to Saltan Waters. That Nombola J. Choa Jamba Magumbi Jemi. Jiden Shema, Jiden the Yend Mariba. Choa just Jamba Gumba de la Saji Jiting Doje. Choa Jamba Magumbi Yemi.
Lesser.
Jamba Gumbi, Choa Jamba Gumbi Chu Marba. What the Imbade? That Choa Jamba Magumbi Yemi de la Tak Tenolu Tanga Saji to Dino, the Sasa Marba. The Sasaroa.
Lesser.
And the Jabba de Marba.
Lesser.
Colin Jiden Songa da Rani Chida Shibame, you had the Neji to Niluna, Telemaru Chishus, Shuenjule, Tangible to Chagoba, Tada Dagamasheba, Zadam the Twenty, and then Deban Hasu, she said, what the new consul down there, and the Sajije, the Bajendal Sajije Tigua. Sajije. Chawatama won't be counted that, Chawatama won't be that, Naricham and Mosondrota. That the Naricham and Son de Ata, Jeremachel, that you know, to some Mambasons Martin, Susan to Sana, Tayan de Oson, to Shanjin de Oson, 10 years or so, 10 years. What the matter? Okay. Chawatama won't be Yemisa, what the jet. That Chawatama won't be paying the last son, Maribason. Chawatama won't pay the last son jet. Chadaba Gumbi is a Chadaba Gungina to Andachores, Chadaba Gungina, Chamadaba Gungina to Andachores, Madaba Chabataba Nashigres, Chamadaba Tambaina, and the Shene, and the Dendutangando, God G2, and then Nasul Jena Dunge, Dendul Jena Doa. What to look and Shane, then Dendrulan, Tabilan, and the Taji, Kumotubilan, Lojan Jene, and Tunda Cheba Yunguris, Dendrulan, Lojan Cheba in and Debut Dendru Yunguris, Tabilan, Lojan Chegina, Debut Taba Yunguris, Sanji Tebachimilan, Lojan Cheba in Debut Sanji Yunguris, Tunda Cheburis, what the shade is under Twenty instead of the J. Don't you watch it? That person so what Taji you go serva. That person so what Taji you go say at the Marba.
You intend combat.
That has on as what the budget lady Mara.
And some Tetsum. The Nede Lagian. Mambo Lasa. Okay. So now we're in the section is the actual way of taking full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. And under that category, we have three. First is training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity. Then the second section deals with training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then the next section deals with training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. So this incorporates all of the content of Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that summarizes all the Kangjur and Tanjur of all the Buddhist pronouncements and the authentic Indian commentaries. The beginning of the Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, we find the quote that says, "Understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics, or I'll define these three." So here in Lama Tsongkhapa's beginning outline of the actual way of taking full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, he summarizes all three of those pathways. And then it begins with the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity. So training the mind in the stages of the path for a being of small capacity, and then there are three categories under that. The first category is the actual thought of for a person of small capacity. So the actual thought is thinking about one's next life and how to achieve a higher realm rebirth, the gods and the humans, questioning what is the pathway, what will lead me to that higher realm rebirth. So it's the thought is the thought that wishes to achieve rebirth in the higher realm. So the training is what will achieve that. That's the training, wondering what will achieve that. But the thought is a wish to achieve higher realm rebirth. The next category is the measure of an attitude of a person of small capacity. And here, this is very similar to how we measure a person of medium capacity. And under that, how do we, quite literally there, how do we measure the desire to definitely emerge or transcendent renunciation? And in Lama Tsongkhapa's Three Principles of the Path, it speaks of if you don't have a moment's wish for the things of this life, and day and night you're thinking of transcendent, of getting out, then this is transcendent renunciation. So I'm going to quote it directly here. So it says, your mind will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of this life, and you will aim for freedom all day and night. Then you experience transcendent renunciation. So here, this is the qualification of a person of medium capacity, so we can apply the same thing to a person of small capacity, but keep it within their scope or their capacity by saying that day and night they're thinking of not even having a moment's wish for anything except achieving a higher realm rebirth in one's future life. So this is the measure of that attitude of a person of small capacity, is whether or not they, day and night, don't have a moment's wish, don't even entertain for a moment the things of this life, and wish for freedom night and day. And freedom in this case would refer to rebirth in the higher realms. In the medium scope, it's referring to liberation, but in this case, we're referring to the aim of rebirth in the gods and the humans' realms. This is the second category, the measure. Clearing up misconceptions concerning the attitude of a person of small capacity is referring to wrong views or misconceptions that will come up, and we'll go over those later on in the text. Next category is the actual training of the thought for a person of small capacity, and there are two categories under that. First, developing a mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and secondly is relying on the means for achieving happiness in a future life. So the first is developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives. It's developing a way of thinking that wishes to achieve rebirth into the higher realms. So for the sake of one's future life, one is wishing to be reborn in the higher realms. So this is the state of mind. And then the next is relying on the means for achieving happiness. So here, the word happiness is a result. So all results are dependent upon their causes. So it is virtue that causes happiness and non-virtue that causes suffering. So here, the means here is referring to the cause. In this case, we're referring to the aim of a small scope practitioner. So the cause of rebirth into the higher realms. So here, this is referring to the pathways which lead to the higher realms. Meditating on those things which give rise to rebirth in the higher realms, because that is the happiness one is seeking out in the small scope. So virtue causes happiness, misdeeds cause suffering. So the means of achieving that happiness is relying on the pathway which leads to the higher realms and relying on virtue. That's the next. The next category, developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, has two categories. And the first one has two categories. First, mindfulness of death, and then secondly, the contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. So that's the first category. And the second category is contemplating what will occur in your future life, the two possibilities of happiness or suffering of the two types of beings. So here, the first category, mindfulness of death, is dealing with the meditation on impermanence and death. So that is that first category. And the second category is referring to the two possible places one can be born in his or her future life. Rebirth into the higher realms or rebirth into the lower realms of suffering. So here, the second category is showing the two possibilities of rebirth, and happiness is caused by virtue, suffering caused by misdeeds or non-virtue. So here, that second category is identifying the two possibilities of rebirth. And then the first category among that, I know I'm going category after category. If you have the text, it's easy to follow, but there's a lot of categories. Mindfulness of death, which, like I said, had two in there. Mindfulness of death and the contemplation that you will not live long. There are 4 points made in there. First is the fault of not cultivating mindfulness of death. Second is the benefit of cultivating mindfulness of death. Third is the kind of cultivation of mindfulness of death you should develop, or the kind of mindfulness of death you should develop. And the fourth is how to cultivate mindfulness of death. So the first category, the fault of not cultivating mindfulness of death, we've already gone over, and there are 6 points that we find within there. Some other scholars say there are 4 points. The commentary we use, there were 6 points that we found. Other commentaries, there are 4 points. So we've already finished that, utilizing commentaries. The next, dealing with the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death, there are 3 points that are made. First point that's made is the great meaning, that it's extremely meaningful, or it has great meaning. So the reason for this, so here this is under the category of the benefits of developing or cultivating the mindfulness of death. Here, great meaning refers to the potential. This basis, once one cultivates mindfulness of death with this basis, he or she can engage in the pathways which lead to the higher realms, engage in the pathways that lead to liberation, engage in the pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood. So when one dies, will wish to have happiness, and one can achieve that happiness through contemplation of mindfulness of death, because one will then be encouraged to engage in those things which cause that happiness in the future, be it higher realms, liberation, or ultimately complete Buddhahood. The second is that it is the gateway to all excellence, or the gateway to excellence. So all excellent qualities are caused by this meditation on death, mindfulness of death. And the third is getting rid of some doubts, or anything doubts that might come up. And then Lama Tsongkhapa says makes a lot of points about this information. So then, what is the origin of this information? And then we find 2 quotes, one from Aryadeva's 400 Verses, and then one quote from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And we find those texts in the Kangjur section. Between the Kangjur and the Kangjur and the Tanjur, the Kangjur being the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. Aryadeva's text, 400 Verses, and Shantideva's text, the Bodhichara Avatara, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, are found in the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. So Lama Tsongkhapa quotes them to show that their source in the Indian commentaries for this information, as well as the points that Lama Tsongkhapa is making. So Lama Tsongkhapa quotes 400 Verses where it says, "What could be more dangerous than to sleep, though at ease, while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the 3 worlds, himself without a master?" And then quotes Shantideva saying, "I will have to depart, leaving everything. But not knowing this, I've committed various sins for the sake of friends and foes." So he quotes 2 of the Tanjur, the Indian commentaries, in order to show that this information is found there as well. So that was, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. That's going back to the cultivation, the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death section where he quotes that. So I just wanted to add that in because I skipped to the benefits and the 3 points, but I had forgotten those are all of the 6 points that are qualified under by using Aryadeva and Shantideva's quotes. Hanga.
Oje odada chawajama magubi yemi wode chawajama magubi yemi dele dat larin chimukuru saji jirwa den deba nolo le saji dudine otu dudwati denda de 다든 tenju no lo ayan dewa ge jong tang shanjin dewa wo de yong ni de jang do an nga so wo de de so le kale nga so lo jong je de da bu do la ne lo jong je na ka ju tenju lo jong je de da bu do
so the some commentaries going back to the faults of not cultivating mindfulness of death make 4 points. Other commentaries make 6 points. But Lama Tsongkhapa shows where the origin of this information is by quoting Shantideva and Aryadeva, who are found in the section called the Authentic Indian Commentaries, the Tenjir. So we're actually studying the authentic Indian commentaries by studying Lama Tsongkhapa's work. So Lama Tsongkhapa quotes 2 texts, but there are many scriptures where we can find this information.
gombi pen chwa dama jesu tembi lo nema shi je nas an jermi puji jagan do penas terin sang ran chwa ta chwa nas ta peje nga terin sang ni shigres ta chwa ina shigres sang ba yeba ina an chuju ko tan tu yeba yin che la ni dan ze la so ba dan josun do ba me ba tone Tadala seba dojin, tonga la subi gune, himbo landu peche la nga ki jongwa sin jongre se marba. Ta nga tarin sani peche shegre samba yoba ina, ane susu trobol chaba do ngres. Shende du, jawa shaman du, ane trobol nyanu roya yo maran. Roya meba te, she yon du, ane trobol chaba do ngres. 다 소소 제 캄발라 소바 사 통알라 소바 도서 근가로 는지된 샤만도 큰 로야요 말어 안 제라 잡아도 그래서 되네 제제 르롱쇼 어떻게 잡아도 되는 말에 네당 제라 소바당 로소메바 통네 다달라 세바도지 통알라 소비 안에 다달 잡아도 되는 This is Jimba Tawala, so Chubambi Wala, so Tendriki Guadu Res, one thing said it. When he Hibbeland, the Peche, Nakin Jumatar, near Gurtan, near Gudan Taba, Tabala Subanjiti, Chuji, Sharon Beba Tanji, Bimba Shawa Tar, Hibbo Mabatan, Lutti Nesu Tone, Nishule, Dojin, Josun Roatan, Sutila Suba Le. Chutila subi les ambonam. Tatu tang, Kubrachibi, Chundriji, Subrachibi, Lula subi, Hibu Meba Nala, Hibu Tamba, Lane, and Kopon Tamba Rani, Zite, Roaje Najan, Tetribina, Tele Tenchua, Chishius Tenchua, Sagitia, what in the Gusu. What thing but that Zilla Subatala. 처음 답을 대용 뒤 니에다 제다 르롱쇼를 잡아두는 잡아두네 되네 저와시마 사장미 되는 도비죠 내손을 제약이죠 어디서 산다네 내손 제약이죠 또 사장미 되는 도약에 네죠 건조선라 저선 주요군에 먹이 주봉 수딩 간도주도 손 디발 샤나지 알아서 어디서 그냥 나용 그래 손이 사마르바
So the section now, the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death. So we'll read from the text, and I'll read it first and then comment on specific sections that Rinpoche commented on. This is more of an overview of the paragraph than specific line-by-line commentary. So I'm going to go through the whole thing and read the commentary and point out applicable lines. When those who have a little understanding of the teaching conclude that they will die today or tomorrow, they see that friends and material possessions will not accompany them, and so they stop craving them. Naturally, they then wish to take full advantage of their human rebirth through virtuous deeds such as giving gifts. Just so, if you create an authentic mindfulness of death, you will see all toiling for worldly things such as goods, respect, and fame is as fruitless as winnowing chaff and it is a source of deception. Then you will turn away from wrongdoing. With constant and respectful effort, you will accumulate good karma by doing such virtuous deeds as going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. You will thereby bring lasting significance to things like the body that will not have had such significance. You will ascend to a sublime state and will lead others there as well. What could be more meaningful? So this is the first section referring to great importance or great meaning. And here, this is under the category benefit of cultivating mindfulness of death. So that if we feel that if someone who hasn't even really practiced suddenly realizes that he or she will die today or die tomorrow, are definitely going to die, then the realization comes that if when I die there is a future life, if there is a next rebirth, friends cannot be brought to the next life. Material things cannot be brought to the next life. All of our material things that we have, such as our house, the wonderful drinks that we have, the food that we crave, none of these things can be brought with us to our next life. So once one recognizes that he or she is going to die, and then the reality of the things of this life, then the craving for them subsides or begins to subside, because there is a recognition that all of the material things, all of the enjoyments of this life cannot carry forward to one's next life. And then the recognition that if one wishes to have happiness in his or her next life as one wishes to have happiness now, then it's necessary to engage in the causes which will create that. And in this context, happiness is referring to happiness of rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and the humans. So here, in recognizing that virtue causes happiness and non-virtue causes suffering, this person who recognizes that he or she is going to die starts to engage in virtuous practices, and here it gives naturally they wish to take full advantage of their human rebirth through virtuous deeds such as giving gifts, such as giving gifts or making offerings, so beginning to engage in virtue which will cause happiness. And in looking at the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, we're referring to those practices which give rise to rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and humans. So by engaging in ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and acknowledging one's downfalls, one can have in one's future life, independence upon these practices, one will in his or her future life be able to experience rebirth in the higher realms of the gods and humans. So here it says, then you will turn away from wrongdoing. With constant and respectful effort, you will accumulate good karma by doing such virtuous deeds as going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. And then it goes on to speak of ascending to a sublime state, the sublime state in this case being the higher realms, gods and humans, and lead others there as well. What could be more meaningful? So this is the commentary on this paragraph on page 146.
Loji deba ngage deba yiji deba tuzoki cheni chonsong tege ane ngai song te cheni go mar
Lessa
ngai song te cheni go ro ta ko jo song la jo song de go ne loji deba ngage deba yiji deba pombe chuti cheni chonsong tege la lama yi mal je ngo zaman ju sen ho te zaman
Lessa Yanju dewa yanju sura
deba song tege ro loji deba ngage deba song te cheni chonsong je ane Nyewaye da dondol che urwa. Da loji deba ngage deba mo sutin chene chonsong urwa.
Oh, okay.
Chewa del deba chewa yungul la chegre ndin hamayi and mel chegres. Jusen wote ko khadin do din zaman.
Okay. So looking at action, we engage in actions through our body, speech, and mind. And if we engage in misdeeds through our body, speech, and mind, then those misdeeds give rise to rebirth into the lower realms. So the actions that we engage in have degrees. So the greatest degree of negative action or non-virtuous action gives rise to a hell realm rebirth. A medium degree gives rise to a hungry ghost realm rebirth, and a small degree of non-virtue gives rise to an animal rebirth. The same holds true for their opposites, the ethics that abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities. So, and one engages in ethics that abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities through his or her body, speech, and mind. So if one engages in a greatest degree of ethics that abandon 10 non-virtuous activities, then this gives rise to rebirth into the God's realm. Medium degree, demigods, small degree, human realm. So this is how that relates to this information.
Dentro da minha docena na zona de que sabe de chegar com membros sabe de membros dentro da minha docena dentro de que chazem de membros taman rozma te com de já be tang da room de ana sujuon tamba mai shuyon zin te na sujuon na pejing ne bang ros já be tang da room what look na da
so it's here in looking previously at the facts where we saw that the number of lower realm beings that are born in the higher realms are similar to the atoms found on a fingernail, and the number of lower realm beings that are born into the lower realms are similar to all the atoms found in the world, and the number of higher realm beings that are born into the higher realms are similar to the atoms on a fingernail, and the number of higher realm beings born into the lower realms are the same as the atoms found in the whole world. And then we find a supporting quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses that say, humans for the most part are involved in the ignoble, therefore most ordinary beings fall to the lower realms. We find this quote from Arya Deva's, most will surely go to the miserable, yeah, that's it. Well, so we find this quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses and how it relates to this information as well. So we're just finding the connections between the information we previously went over and what we're studying.
Lane Gopon Tamba Rani Nzitesa. Tedu Chando Dan, Chutin Song, and Dibala Shana Kantojene, and the Soso Dundul Chigre, Kaza Agenda Dundul Tigres, the Tibahina Tunda Chabrisova.
It speaks of turning away from wrongdoing with constant respectful effort. So by putting in effort, you will accumulate good karma by engaging in virtuous deeds and as going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. So by engaging in the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtues, and by going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and by acknowledging one's downfalls, one will bring lasting significance to this body that wouldn't be so significant, and then will be able to achieve a sublime state, here in this case a higher realm rebirth, and lead others to that state.
So it's
similar if we look at other religious traditions such as Christianity, where it speaks of going for refuge to God and ethics and then being able to be reborn into heaven. Similar, we find connections.
And this Haji Ndul Nyangal Deva Chambers and do Yinjata, Dole Sombares, Dole, Shimo Taji Nana, Dangelu Chogo, J Taji Nana Balangi, Duji Taji Nana, Madaba Chin Dushi, Chu Intes, Chures, Sanji Sombares, Marbe.
That's so.
That Najimata Juru Nana, and doing David Nabaje, Kunju David Nabaje. Godeng Nabajilan, Nabachuru, Marabas, Judu, and Matab doing David Nabaji and Tambo Mataba Marabas, Sanji, what the Mataba Sumo in Jirvata. what things are Kazon Rose Chinsaro. Lucy Tajina, Mataba, Chi Lucy Chu in this. Takazon also the Mataba Tamata Rapa Zero, and the Mataba Gombulo de la Tarani on Grechi, Chi Lucy de la Tarani on the Unity, Mataba Zishan Mataba in Samarba. And then Atul Pomunga Matabare, Joanga Matabare, Samatabare, Chumatabare, Shimatabaroa. Chi Lucy Chewa said the sentient to Jumarwa, Marba. She is what the Matabakum, what things said.
That's so.
What the Gumbaina, the Daki Penchabares, the net, the Casure, Mataba to Gungina, and the Consons in the Batan, Marie Batan, and the Najet Taji Sel Hosa, Mataba Gungina, the Baz Zokan Zume Consonji, the Baz and the Shine Jerota. Dosha Sendagre, Mariba Sendagre, Naje Sendagres, She Sosa. Tejindo, Nomobatani, Nomobatanji, Jumbi Toa Tabaris, Toa Tabo. Gele Tanji Chichato, Drobala, Droba, Gele Tanji Chichato, Drobala, Jubi Guchembu Juba. Guchembu Jubala, Subi Jan, Hansos. Sanji Mataba Gongina, Shidagi Abris and Haju Mobiores, Hanso, second door. What about the allergy Jujan Mara?
So, here, once again, who stated these things about the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death? And here, Lama Tsongkhapa quotes a source of a sutra found in the Khensur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, the final nirvana, the great final nirvana sutra, where it states, among all reapings, the autumn harvest is supreme. Among all tracks, the track of the elephant is supreme. Among all ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme, because with it you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. Similarly, it is praised for being the hammer that instantly destroys all afflictions and wrongdoing, for being the gateway into the instantaneous achievement of all virtue and goodness. So, here, it's stating that the meditation on impermanence and death is supreme. It is supreme because it is the eliminator here, it says, of all attachment, ignorance, and pride in the three realms. And in looking at the Four Noble Truths, there are 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. There are 4 attributes of the truth of origin, 4 attributes of the truth of, 4 attributes of the truth of suffering, 4 attributes of the truth of origin, 4 attributes of the truth of cessation, and 4 attributes of the truth of path. And the first attribute among the 4 of the truth of suffering is the impermanence. So the wrong view is grasping at permanence as being, the impermanent as being permanence. So this is the first point made within the 4 Arya or 4 superior truths. So here, it's when we went over impermanence, we went over impermanence, how there is coarse impermanence and subtle impermanence. And when we look at subjects that are impermanent, we find subjects such as the 5 aggregates, the 5 elements, the earth, water, trees. These things are all subjects that are impermanent. But when we're speaking of impermanence and death, we're speaking specifically about the impermanence of a being or a person, a kansak. So this is a specific to kansak, specific to a being, when we're speaking of impermanence and death in this specific case, when we're speaking of this. And it says it's the chief because from it one eliminates all of these other negativities. It says it's praised for being the hammer that instantly destroys. And I think sampa tantric kanga the chu punsu sobi go lasin
punsu go
okay the lamas okay Dixon.
Yeah, what did that then Mataba Gongi, Cho Mataba Gongina, and then the Bindasha Senegre, Naje Senegre, Tomon Segres, Songdua, and then Mataba Gombolo, Ya, Consons in the Shag nearby. And the Consons of Maribina Bimbata, Takonani Mob Maribina Bai, Lendela Mob Maribina Bai, mataba lo toba maraba tene de nyomo batani nyomo bataji nyomo toana ai nyomo batani nyomo bataji nyebo aimi mataba lo te denzing nyebo aimi what the sound down the Kumoja woman. Mataba sound do by in a Telaten legend, Tony to the Mombishene, and then to do the reservation Matu, Mataba Kumulu Chibutege, Yomotaji never do what it want to do.
That's it. So here a doubt has to arise, because here it states that among all ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme, because with it you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. So here a doubt has to arise. When we're looking at the subject of ignorance, there's two kinds of ignorance. Ignorance of the law of karma and its results, and then ignorance of the nature of reality. So is it an antidote to the ignorance of the nature of reality? Is it an antidote to the ignorance of the law of cause and effect? Here it says attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. So is it an antidote to the grasping at true establishment? So doubt has to arise when we see a statement like that. And what we have to look at is that by meditating upon impermanence and death, then one will naturally, over time, by thinking about this over and over again, then wish to study karma and its results, and wish to engage in meditation upon emptiness and so forth. So here, a doubt arises because it's speaking specifically as an eliminator of these things. But when we look at what that means, we're speaking of what it allows one to do. So it's being the starting point of what allows one to do. We have to look at it in this way.
Tabat dream person, ko dreams logic in Shigduna. John Shigo Maris, Taba Launching Maris Lana, what the dreams do Maruta. Then a launching mention does it. Does it, Bridges Jibon of Moajo, Jamaji and Abunito, the woman you but the Catulas and Taba dream my images on Taba dreams in London. Taba launching my images on Taba dreams in London. Mataba shares on Tanzin, Mataba shares on
So, if there's a person who's in a house, who is in a dark room and believes that he or she sees a snake and is mistaking a rope for a snake at that point, and then a fear arises, but at the same time, someone were to walk in and say to that person, don't worry, there isn't an elephant there. This would in no way serve as an opponent to the fear of the person believing that it's a snake. Likewise, the only thing that serves as an opponent to the grasping at the permanence is the meditation upon impermanence. And likewise, the grasping at true establishment is a meditation upon the lack of true establishment. So here it has to be the direct opponent to what one is worried about. So here the direct opponent is what we're speaking of when we're speaking of the doubts that we might arise when we're looking at this being an eliminator in a general sense. And there's a quote from, the quote is from Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, where it speaks of if someone has that notion that there is a snake in the room, that if someone coming in and saying that it's not an elephant will in no way harm that wrong view. So that's the quote from the Madhyamika Avatara.
Then someone the Shansu Mutan gave me Shinja Sajo means Shamba the Niji the Shanju Center of Galo, Gawashira touch of race, and Denzil no two Maris, Denzil down, and then Denzil down, and the Shanju Senators of maybe Gila means the Tongue Maris, and Shanju Sentege, and Denzil Sajo Nebu Maris.
less so. Then the
Shansu Montan Game Sher, Shindu Neva Tachu means, Shambatan Hinjidang, Shanju Sena Subatolo, Denzi Maribatan, Miba Gila Minis, the Dangongi Maris, Miba Gila Minis, the Dangongi, Taba Dream, as if we looked at Taba Dream, my Imba Chevilunite, Miba Taba Gila Mine, Jig Dreams in Gode, Jig Dream, my Mazivo, what the Naja Radio Maris, the Yusozan, Shanju Sena Subatuke, Denzi Tachu Yem Maris. What is
and then we find in Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition, where it speaks of love, compassion, and bodhicitta are not opponents to the grasping at true establishment, because the object of observation isn't concordant or isn't a proper opponent. So the here. The object of observation being love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So those don't serve as a proper opponent to a grasping at true establishment. So here it's very similar in this sense that the opponent to or antidote to the grasping at true establishment is the true view or non-mistaken view that recognizes the lack of true establishment of things. So the only opponent to these things is their antithesis, which is their antidote. Detsuko Rinpoche, the Jidanju.
Oh, yeah.
So we have, take a short break. Now.
다 양갈리 대바 쳔볼레 제 타제 나네 발랑게 추레스 되제 타제 나네 마다면 되제 추인데 데다기 칸송지 되바다 마리바다 나제 타제 셀로스 대진도 녀모바다니 녀모바다니 좀 토하다 버려서 마다바 셰빌로다 저 마다바 셰빌로다게 녀모바다니 녀모바다지 내보아이 ane debindo shata maribata ngaje what that thing but matabashe nga shegre nya matabashe suna ane dongel gabayo marwa dongel jukar dongel tsawa kares dongel tsawa denzire ane matabatu lola tene dongel tsawa denzin machine re ane dongel tsawa ane bonje jitene demetu lo Okay,
so here, among all reapings, the autumn harvest is supreme among all tracks. The track of the elephant is supreme among all ideas. The idea of impermanence and death is supreme because with it you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. Similarly, it is praised for being the hammer that instantly destroys all afflictions and wrongdoing, for being the gateway into the instantaneous achievement of all virtue and goodness. So here, is meditation upon impermanence and death direct antidote to all afflictions and wrongdoing? So we ask this question. So how is this possible? So when one meditates upon impermanence and death, and then has the realization that he or she will die or is going to die, then the next thought will be, how do I achieve happiness in the future? And if one doesn't like suffering, then that will be the desire now, then one will desire to not have suffering in the future. So what causes happiness? So then one begins to, as a result of meditating on impermanence and death, start to look at what causes happiness, what causes suffering. And then when one looks at the origin or cause of suffering, we find grasping at true establishment to be the root of suffering. So then what is the antidote to the grasping at true establishment? It's the mind that realizes selflessness. So we see then how, as a result of this meditation or familiarity with impermanence and death, then one moves from the cause of suffering and happiness to the root of suffering, which is grasping, to the antidote to that, which is the mind that realizes selflessness. So this is how it becomes the gateway and is the hammer that instantly destroys all of these afflictions and wrongdoing.
다 돈치와 연비 가서 돈치 콘도 되는 양을 대바 전부 나는 데베 첨부 지정과
Bless you.
노인지로다. 대신도 총지 정도 총대 노인지래. 총례장 련데 자녀던다와 또 샤신 련데 자녀던다와 또 샤신 대신 최나 평균자 신에 뉴지마도 전는데 죄바 최다자베 따양 매반도 셰당사 오늘마다 마다베 배송도 그게 련데 자녀던다와 ngazu belati tang galasi tu sunda marbe belati tang galasi tu sa sona nasa chado ro ten aje ngazu lute tanda bares ana ngazu kawa sonji kama rari mamata joma suba chobe tamalan lu da tin tabo diji chona chetata mata patu rabmude ngazu lute ne kama ndabares kama ngazu chenle kama twayo ma do nimi kama twayo ma ten aje lute ka ko kongaane meba chadres rari sana ngaso mil nasa go ki kabut sab thong de aje nasa jung gorwa kabut sab thong gorwa ane rari ryo kasa kabut sab ngone yo marwata ten aje ngaso taba rek mar matabares kamarari mamata ngaso barale marbe barale ko jutsu ko sishena tena ngaso lede tena
de shunju
mari bandorndo
de
kamarari mamata juma marbe juma ta juma ngaso mil zenda shuba ina shinta to tal ta ngaba cheten mo marbe tena ngaso mataba yimbala taba thondu waras matabares kamarari mamata juma siba sana ngaso shugen ngaba tsakale chujindu nyama mashe kundul ta chunduwa anna nyama sha zonlansa ko kandu ten aje ngasu le de ten da bara mata bares
the yanja surna
kamarari mamata juma sana ngasu je nam de jo de mil jo ga ina shin da du ta ta la bu chi tong go da de shin ta lang tong as ngasu jaga tu su lu ngama yu de san yu je de ko je da chi ma da chi mil jo sona and ku kamba to ta anda mata lama china mata thong da
some eye lotion eye ointment yeah
siba sana ngaso sa kan chuta marbe shoge ngabul yer ko nyama sha som kan do mata lu
sugar apple
sa sana
grass. Oh, the dew on the grass. Okay. The dew on the grass. There are all these examples of impermanence. I'm just trying to be literal, but they're all examples of impermanence, and I want to get them right. Dew on the grass. Okay.
What the zakal chujiro? What the Yamasha on also can do? Then I think I should lose that nowadays. Kamarari Mama Juma Siva, Chubur Marbe, Barabol,
bubbles. Bubbles.
Nasu Ludu Wara Babu is what. What the Matabu Marbe, Sanjiro.
So the Buddha, I probably will miss one or two of these, but the Buddha gave in sutra teachings many examples to show impermanence or to explain impermanence. So and to explain the impermanence of our bodies specifically. So the Buddha said our bodies are like the stars that in the night are there and then in the morning are gone. Our bodies are like a butter lamp that is extinguished when the fire goes out. Our bodies are like the dew in the morning on the blades of grass that is no longer there at noon. Our bodies are like bubbles or froth of a wave, or bubbles in a wave. And then there were two more. One was an eye ointment that temporarily makes one see things very well, but when it stops, the power of the ointment isn't there any longer. The clarity's no longer there. Rinpoche said in India they had this and still do. You have it. So if someone has jaundice or has an eye problem, they see something that's white as yellow.
The cause is sick cause.
And it's caused by the eye having a mistaken view. Oh, so the grasping at our body as being permanent is similar to the mistaken view that when an eye has jaundice or has a disease, and cognizes something that's white as being yellow. So it's a mistaken view. The grasping at our body as being permanent is as mistaken as when our eye mistakes something because of having a disease as being yellow when it's not. So that example was given, and then all that was stated, and then all these other examples were given of to show the impermanence of our bodies. And the stars, the butter lamp, the eye oint, the dew, the grass, the bubbles. Oh, in the dream. Okay, so in the dream state, we see so an example of the mistake. Okay, so this grasping at the body as being permanent is like the elephants and things that we see in our dreams that aren't really there either. So this belief that the body is permanent is as real as the elephants that we see in our dreams, the fake things that we see in our dreams. Oh, flash of lightning in the dark. So the body is like a flash of lightning. The Shenju Lang Drapudu, our body is similar to a flash of lightning in the dark. Similar to a cloud. So the clouds are there and then they are gone. So here, so going back, now I have to go back to where we were. I think I forgot a thing, but I'm now not going to. So here it says there's a collection of indicative verses, understanding that the body is like a clay vessel. Similarly, that phenomena are like mirages. Here you destroy the demon's poisonous tipped flower weapons and pass beyond the sight of Lord of Death. Here it says understanding the body is like a clay vessel. So our body, if we look at a glass or a plate, these things break and are easily destroyed. So our body is easily destroyed, and it is compared to that. So I probably should have started with that quote. That's where Rinpoche started, but I got into the other sutra quote. But this is the first quote that then the other information follows about the impermanence of the body. And here it says phenomena are like mirages, this grasping at the permanence of phenomena. And then the grasping at permanence is like seeing something white that's yellow because of an eye irritation, or etc. Those examples that were previously given. So here, understanding that the body is like a clay vessel, again, like a plate or a glass that can be easily broken and destroyed. And similarly, that phenomena are like mirages. Here, mirage is referring to when we are in the desert and we believe that there's water off in the distance, but it's not really there. Likewise, our belief that this body, this grasping at the body as being permanent, is a mirage because it is truly impermanent.
Gombande Junres, the Jubas, the Juba, Cheda Jabu, Diam Mebanus, Cheda Jabu Garsure, Tangasu, Dundulcia, Tabandria, the Sanjiala, Kunoba Jeguru. Noba Jegus of Tajinto, and the Noba Jetu Maris, and the Dundure, and the Tabandure, Sanjegres, Cheda Jabu, Diam Mebanus. Treasure Tembi Jin Gaza. Treasure Tele Sheshubi, Kasa, Sisibat Sonajan, Dungayanju, Sebatu, Treasure Tembi Genova, Duji Meris Tajinto, Sebatan Tubashis, Namatu Kangalo, Dugit and Dundrea, Tabandrea, and Nobajin Dugit Tajinto, Nobajetu Mare, and Dundure, 타반도 그래 상하지 그래 어떤 라무도 뒤지 메레 자신도 세바탄 두바시스
Pass beyond.
체다 잡이 따양 매버로스 체다 잡이 너바지야 그 체도 안놓고 따양 안에 대수
Chira jabo, the gunjan damba.
체다 잡어도 체다기 뒤 가정 아주 타만 줘서 나 제자분 오주에 말ပဲ
Less so.
저 제대 송하다 너는 제대 송하다 라니 셰부메 왜데 니지도 니루나 텔마로 지슈스 테마르베데 다 간데 레다 녀모 근주도 세지 봐 말베데 레다 녀모 근주라서부터 소원하게 도저원하게 되는 가지고 그래 안에 못아봐 제도는 못아봐 단지 회시 다 간데 단지 체다 응어서 다 단지를 고고하나 보데 대유 콘래 이제블로 정도 다 달라 지된 송하다 안에 체다 라니 셰범에 유에데 내진이 루나 델마로 소시스 어때 체조 소된 게 체다 주요하레스 대 체다 그 뒤당 체다니를 잡아 자고 가정은 진사 말이야.
Less so.
체다 그 뒤 체와 들어와. 레도 녀모 뭐 체와.
Less so.
예류 체와. 어디서 그걸로 체다 그 뒤에 들어와. 체다 줘서나 다가데 단진로서 녀모 어디서 자는데. 레도 녀모 봐.
Less so.
내는 근육 밥이 돼 먹었어.
Less so. Then it metu don't negare. Metu.
모두서 다 다가질 Perché però ma tu c'è ma tu non ne dici marwa.
Ale, Chemadan the tube trouble do it.
Zobut taba mai bala taban semba.
Ale.
Ne cheda ke diji motu unda mares.
Less so.
Te moture mar lolo shi.
Less so.
Te yo mares.
Less so.
Ta mata bares.
Less so.
O te injero da.
So, understanding the body is like a clay vessel, and similarly that phenomena are like mirages. Here you destroy the demons of the poisonous flower-tipped weapons and pass beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. So previously we went over this. So here, passing beyond the sight of the Lord of Death, we have various forms of happiness that we can achieve, happiness into the higher realms of suffering, happiness of liberation or nirvana, and then happiness of complete Buddhahood. So passing beyond the sight of the Lord of Death, liberation or Buddhahood, but we can also speak of that first goal of the rebirth into the higher realms. And here the demon's poisonous flower-tipped weapons here, there is this is referring to the illusory nature of things. The illusory nature that things are the body and such are permanent when they are truly impermanent. So here, its belief in its being permanent is like a poisonous flower-tipped weapon, because it's a mistaken view. It's a wrong view that we're grasping at this, which what looks like a flower, but it's really not. It's poison because it's a wrong view. So we're grasping at the impermanent as being permanent when it really isn't. So passing beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. Here, Lord of Death, when we previously went over a quote from Aryadeva's 400 verses in the mindfulness of when we went over Aryadeva's 400 verses previously, we spoke of the Lord of Death, where it says, what could be more dangerous than to sleep at ease while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the three worlds, himself without a master. Here, the Lord of Death is referring to the truth of origin, that which is origin, karma and the afflictions. The karma and the afflictions give rise to death in all realms, all three realms of the below the earth, on the earth, and above the earth. So the karma and afflictions are the Lord of Death. So we previously went over that. So here, when it's saying passing beyond the sight of the Lord of Death, it's passing beyond the karma and the afflictions that give rise to death. So this is the meaning, and I apologize if I left anything out from this translation, but I believe that I got all of the information. So here, by meditating upon impermanence, which is the opponent to the grasping at permanence, which is wrong, one is able to pass beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. So understanding that the body is like a clay vessel, easily broken, and similarly that phenomena are like mirages. Phenomena seem permanent, but they are impermanent. Here you destroy the demon's poisonous tip flower weapons, again grasping at that which is not real, and pass beyond the sight of the Lord of Death, going beyond suffering, beyond the origin of suffering.
Tada cheda jabe tang mebandu duji me zajin to sibatan do ba je woten da ban mo padu ta ga de lu je de le taban ze lu da ane taban ze lu to ga lo duji mo tu na mo marba duji mo tu taban ze lu de ni ba sho sana le de janu ta ma ta ba ko lo le de jomatabo matabo gumbulo what the tsuge nyabashi balatene what kasukure tanzin donos.
So this demon's poisonous tip flower weapons refers to the grasping at permanent self, grasping at the permanence. So the antidote to that is the meditation upon the impermanence, the perishability of the body. So this serves as an opponent to the poisonous flower-tipped weapons, which are referring to mistaken views that we grasp at something that isn't what it appears to be. So grasping at the impermanent as being permanent, that's destroyed by the antidote, which is the body, that the body is perishable, the body is impermanent.
Du garang jula so bota so ke tane dendron doya ta taban doya ta sanji al ne bachi shebo bachi shege doba yoba ina bachi shetu mares bachi me bandores.
So it removes there are certain obstacles to rebirth in the higher realms, liberation or Buddhahood. So here we're destroying those obstacles to that goal. So barchi, we're abandoning the obstacles or obstructions. Barchi, yeah, that's it.
Barchi, hump.
Yeah.
What is it? Cheda jabita mabandro. Ta tane ajan de chung samar chung she dang sa.
So now it's another quote.
Gawa tong she ne ji dunge dang sentan jawa sentan jayu shewa tong ne ane ta ga so mata sal tang ba ina ane jiga na chi dunge shi ro ji dunge ga yi dunge shi dunge wo tu su she mar ba gawa tong she is gawa san all sapar mar ba gawa tong she neji dunge tas sapar ba neji dunge tas sentan jawa shewa tong ne shi dunge mar ba shi dunge tong ne tembi turan dai ta mata ba gombe lo tembo mata ba jamba gen de go mar ba mata ba gombe lo ta mata dunge tong da me wa toni gombe lo la so tu tembo jong so na tembi turan dai chenpo ne se turan dai kui turan ge chen po ne an ji tembi chenpo je sa chenpo je chen po to res kui chin dunge ge chin wa de po to re po je jiden pepe de bon yor kensa jiden pepa to watan ponto mars ko gone loka kaso ya tem chago ta mata ba go lo ta ngaju samba de sanju se sogur be ta to so solon jolan tolan golan molu lan male ba to de ngaju ponto maro wa to so kanga go jero ta
by seeing
the paranga the parasanga the Buddhist was what the Madur Tangan Puntuma. No, Netelea, Buddhist was Malulan Cosoma Ponto Maro, Rangelea, Malulan Cosoma Ponto Maro, and teaching Malulan. That teaching belong was not in our Maromato. What doesn't have been some of it?
Dene chewa metapa magona. Dene solan julan tonlam. Got it. Yanja suralam.
chewa mataba gung. Chewa mataba lo de abishe suna ko shea yinba kugorwa. Shene dendru ngandul chesa del dendru ngandul matu meba shegro da. An dendru ngandul jina dungere ki jukar. Dungeng tsaw kar. Dendru jina dwa yona di jukar. Uta tsaji tane ane dungeng tsawa tenzin dungeng tsawa marba. Wati nyebu toni goya.
Okay.
Okay.
So by seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, and dead bodies from which the mind is gone, the resolute abandon this prison-like home, while ordinary beings can never eliminate attachment. So by meditation upon impermanence and death, so here we're looking at the various types of suffering, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, so this would be also the suffering of suffering. Suffering of sickness would be the suffering of suffering. And dead bodies from which the mind is gone now, so meaning the suffering of death, being separated from this body, dying. The resolute abandon this prison-like home. So the resolute are those who meditate upon impermanence and death. And by meditating upon impermanence and death, then one will look towards what will be the cause of happiness and what will be the cause of suffering. What is the cause of rebirth into the lower realms? What is the cause of rebirth into the higher realms? As a result of doing this meditation and recognizing future rebirth only has two possibilities, higher realm and lower realm. So one then looks to how to create the causes for happiness, causes for higher realm rebirth, and then eventually wishing for the higher realization. So one recognizes the impermanence in death and then wishes to apply an antidote to the negativities and wishes to first experience a higher realm rebirth. And then there is a recognition that at the root of suffering and at the root of cyclic existence altogether, we find the grasping at true establishment, which causes or gives rise to cyclic existence. So then the antidote to the grasping at true establishment is meditation upon emptiness. So meditation upon emptiness becomes the antidote to the grasping at true establishment, and then one wishes to emerge and so forth, and then progresses or goes through the various pathways in order to achieve a freedom from this prison-like home. The resolute abandon this prison-like home. The resolute, those engaging in meditation upon impermanence and death, those who are in the causes of happiness, the causes of happiness of the higher realms, then the causes of happiness of liberation, the causes of happiness of complete Buddhahood. So one wishes to abandon the prison-like home, which is caused, its root cause, cyclic existence root cause being grasping at true establishment, meditation on emptiness being its antidote, and the pathways being that which lead one to the abandonment of cyclic existence. And there are 5 pathways. There are 5 pathways of the here, the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning of the hearer. In order to abandon, achieve the final stage of path of no more learning of the hearer, we have to have a meditation upon impermanence and death. Without it, it's not possible. To achieve the 5 paths of the path of the Pratyeka Buddha, or solitary realizer, it's necessary to meditate upon impermanence and death. The path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. The path of no more learning can't be achieved without meditation upon impermanence and death. And then looking into the Mahayana, the same situation of path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning are all achieved in dependence upon this meditation upon impermanence and death. So in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we find the mantra, Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgati Bodhisoha. And this mantra implicitly is referring to the 5 paths of the 3 vehicles. The path of accumulation, Om Gate, the path of preparation, Gate, the path of seeing, Paragati, the path of meditation, Parasamgati, and then the no more learning, Bodhisoha. So Bodhisoha cannot be achieved in any among the 3 vehicles, here solitary or Bodhisattva Yana, without the achievement of this meditation upon impermanence and death. So this is how we see the progression. And it says, the resolute abandon the prison-like home, while ordinary beings being those who don't engage in this meditation upon impermanence and death, can never eliminate attachment, because even if they engage in practices, they won't have any potency, they won't have any power. So this is ordinary beings, even if they engage in practice, there's no power to it because there isn't this basis.
다 등에 제가 나치 등에 들으면서 지 등에 치 등에 가이 등에 ane nayi dunga wate she tere dunga teje pombola te kaso gore sendan tre shewa tonne ne sondu ne chewa chi dunga mara chi dunga du ko madaba mara chi dunga tonne ne tembes te dabe madaba ko lo tembe tusuna tembe jora dai chimpungis lo tembe chasuna jora dai chimpungis 저런 데 진짜 대동 같은 파랑가도 파라상가 버티소와 템바도 가봐자고 그래. 몰로랑 자고 그래. 통랑 자고 그러나 몰로랑 베친지로. 얘도 몰로랑네 제가 나시 동에 본투 그래. 라제 몰로랑 본투 그래. 다 티제 몰랑 고소이나 장주 선비 거수 pomba요지로.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, so the this Gaishin, the Sajuk Jepa, got the
Techemba. Nachi Dungashi Dota, the Mataba Sendan Day, Showa Tones on the Mataba Kungo, Showa Tone, Dambis, Lotem with the Kaduba Chagre, Teatan Garden, got the Paranga, then should Molulan Kosu, Molulan Kosu, Cheganashi Dungapun, what
the Techen, Chapagare, Techen.
Techen, the Malang Timen goes to Dungaponsana, and Techen Tolan Leon to Dungaponsabro.
Lesser.
Malang Mama Soina, Dungan Sajiba Matubong.
Lesser. Okay.
Tessie Sajima Tuba, Tessie Tiba Mabijis. Lesser. Sajiba Matuba, Tessie to Timek Jiggles. Lesser. What do you admire? Lesser. Malang was okay. What things turned up.
Okay, so. Here you destroy, I'm sorry, the resolute abandon this, okay, let me back up. The 4 types of suffering, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. In here we find 3 of them. By seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, and dead bodies from which the mind is gone. So this is the suffering of aging, sickness, and death. The resolute abandon this home. Resolute is referring to those who have a very stable practice, this stable awareness of death and impermanence. So those with this stability abandon the prison-like home. So here, this word abandon, how does one abandon the prison-like home? One abandons it by teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. So the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death is abandoned for when we're looking at the hearer's path. Hearer's path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. At the path of no more learning, there's an abandonment of the prison-like home. The abandonment of the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. And the Prachika Buddhas at the path of no more learning, after going through the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and then no more learning, abandon the prison-like home. And something I just missed before, or when we're looking at the Mahayana, there are 2 possibilities. There is a bodhisattva, a Hinayana practitioner, who has completed the path of no more learning, who has abandoned the prison-like home, but goes back and begins the Mahayana path at the path of accumulation. So that being who has already achieved the path of no more learning in the Hinayana vehicle has abandoned the prison-like home. And the other possibility, in looking at the Mahayana vehicle, an 8th ground bodhisattva is said to have abandoned the same thing as a Hinayana foe destroyer. So the abandonment of the prison-like home, there are two possibilities within the Mahayana. The practitioner who already did so on the Hinayana track and has traversed and finished the path of no more learning, so has abandoned the prison-like home, and is only at the beginning pathway of the Mahayana in that case, but has abandoned their prison-like home because it has abandoned birth, aging, sickness, and death of cyclic existence, or an 8th ground bodhisattva who achieves that on the path of Gonlam, the Sajeba Gonlampa. Gonlampa. So the 8th ground bodhisattva on the path of meditation.
What the is the man does that the Nigerian baby won't do your case. Jiden paper, the long majuba, and so long, but and so long, but to get and then doing a pond ayu. Sabatapa no punga ponsana, pondo yusantiro. Sabatapa nasa ponsana, ponsemba. Dead days and up.
So here, the ordinary beings can never eliminate attachment. Here, eliminate is completely abandoned. So this abandonment, where we can say there are abandoning by ordinary beings can take place, but not abandonment. So unless the path of preparation, path of meditation, etc., is traversed by a being, then it's not possible to abandon, and that's a finality, abandon or eliminate attachment.
What about
eliminating and eliminated is what we're
talking about.
Okay, so under the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death, we've gotten through the second point, that it is the gateway to all virtue and goodness. Karma doing your
Dona jibi druba jibi drubi tunes jayu ten chabajen tubi tunde kona ilasa jibi tenda duyage jibi tenda tadendri lang tabi lang sanji kupon tubi lang tu sumarbe tetu duyage tusu te tananga su tenju melu tubi tusende kona res woke peje ngāndu dējīn, dendro chōngzī rī ngō chāng, māngkhōng bī nē sō, shē chī yu, tētā tō chū rū bī kā mī nē lās, ngā sō mā chā ngā sōng dē yu wā rēs, dendro lī tē tē yung gō rī tēn māngkhōng bā lī chī dē yu wā rēs, māngkhōng bā lī chī chū chī tō mā rō wā, chū rū bī kā nyē yu mā rēs, mī nē lā, rū bī chū bī tēn rī tū nā ngā, tū bā nā yāng, chū chī chī tō mā rū bā nē tā dōng, 마치냐봐 다 대화제든 줘봐 주선 메일로든 투바 이나야 근데 최 마루바데 주세 가를 토여서 따반지 따는 토데르스 다 다도 마치냐봐 안들라 토 누비나 르 마치냐비 쇼제바네 그바 타제지 고당 디니버 저와 잠바네 방송 소바 타제지 고우스 워테레노 다 저마다 공빌로데 안에 르 마치냐 비주노 고바 타지고 다반제베 다니 고바 타지고 그래서 라니 진진 고바 kunju 라 진진데 고바 kunju 그래서 준 타지고 그래서 라 진진 라테네 제가 나시 동에라 소바 준 타지도 용고 그래서 라 진진 준 타지고 그래서 대나지 다반제베 단진데 아니 준 타지고 그래서 단진 라테네 제가 나시 동에라 소바 참아 용고 그래서 네 마다바 공부로더니 ane pensong soba tangche kores matabilo talatene ane dendru lang tabi lang sanje kumbudu lang tsama yung kores pensong soba tangche ko rani jenzen yuen goba kunji ko mana jenzen yuen ten kunji sen tabu mude mataba kumbulo te jen jenzen tabu che taban zebe tanzi te ran jenzen tabu mude wo tene songdo ndo ta pensong soba tangche ko se to tere ndo mataba kumbulo te.
So in brief, the only time you accomplish the aims of beings is now, when you have attained a special life of leisure and opportunity. So the benefit of this is that it is the gateway to all virtue and goodness. So the benefit of this basis that we have. So it says we've attained a special life of leisure and opportunity. We have a life of 8 leisures and 10 opportunities, or 8 leisures and 10 endowments. We are here, leisure means we are in a state from which one can practice Dharma. A leisureless state is a state from which one cannot practice Dharma. We currently have a state of leisure. And it says, a few come to the happy realms, but the majority of these situations that lack leisure. So here, more often than not, more beings are in leisureless states than are in states of leisure. Therefore, you do not get a chance to practice the teachings in these situations. I'm going to read right through, even when you have gained the circumstances allowing for practice, the reason that you do not practice the teachings properly is the thought that I will not die yet. So here, when it's speaking of the gateway, so the time to practice is now. So most of the states that we abide in are leisureless. And if we look at how this meditation upon impermanence and death is the gateway to all virtue and goodness, we find a similar quote in the Guru Pujan, Lama Chupa, where there is a quote about the cherishing ourselves. And it says the cherishing ourselves is the gateway to all torment, while cherishing others is the foundation to all that is good. And we seek your blessings to make this our core practice, the yoga of exchange of self and others. So here, this is a very similar notion to that, where it's speaking of cherishing ourself as the gateway to all that is bad. Here, we're speaking of meditation on impermanence as the gateway to all virtue and goodness, as the other cherishing attitude is said to be in this case. So it's very similar sentiment.
다 도바줘봐 때즈마도 대시를 때다불라 최소한 이제 공주 매바 나지 냐래 논냐바다 공자 인야 담보 종세상 공바샤이 준비 냐래도 메요소냐도 무좀와 근데 토다 바송도 글로라 냐바 힌타바네 제데 공바샤오사 다 못하고 공부를 때는 가서 그래. 공시다 저 메케스를 공시를 맞두지게 공야부 공야요나 못하고 공부 말이스. 아니 공 걔도 공부이나 때고 되는 다바 공부 말이스. 어떤 도와줘서로 어디서는 지금 말이스. 주세 가르스나 못하고 공부를 때 아니 토다 바송도 개체와리스. 대제이나 아니 도마 개체와 바도 개체와 타마 개체와 이제 대자원 해지도에서 사나지 해지 도다바도 계속 도다바송도 개체와 나지 네 마다바고 물로대야 티쟁 온지나 도마 개체와래 도마 마다바고 물로매나 샤주선라서 해지라서 제토아요 말했어 봐도 마다바고 물로매나 샤주선도 냐노에서 타만래 마다바고 물로도 구글에서 토다 바송도 글로라 네바 힌타바네 제데 공바샤오스 어디서 도바죠 버티사레 도바 가르스나 te 공주 셔라 공자 맹서 공아레스 마타바데 공자 뭐여나 되는 마타바 공고 말레스 근데 걔들 마타바 공바 인테즈 공 되는 뭐 공주야 막 어때 도바 주네
So the next part is about dispelling doubts or qualms that might have, and there's a very little about that. It says, therefore, the thought that you will not die is the source of all deterioration, and the remedy for this mindfulness of death, the source of all that is excellent. So very similar to the Guru Puja. Consequently, you should not think that this is a practice for those who do not have some other profound teaching to cultivate in meditation. So this is where it begins, the point about dispelling doubts. Nor should you think that although this is something worthy of meditation, you should cultivate it just a little at the beginning of the meditation session because it is not suitable for continuous practice. Rather be certain from the depths of your heart that is necessary in the beginning, middle, and end, and then cultivate it in meditation. So in the we find the quote, the compassion is important in the beginning, the middle, and the end. Here it's similarly, meditation upon impermanence is important in the beginning, the middle, and the end, because in dependence upon it, we are able to engage in practices that lead to the higher realms, engage in practices that lead to liberation, engage in practices that lead to complete Buddhahood. So there has to be a continuous meditation upon this notion of impermanence. And it's the wrong idea that's being dispelled here is that one can just initially meditate upon it a little bit, once or twice, initial part of the session, and then it no longer is important in the latter meditations, or that there's better meditations than this meditation upon impermanence that one should do. So what is being negated is that idea that this is some sort of introductory meditation, or that it's something that it isn't something that permeates practice throughout the entire course. So that's the best way to put it. It has to permeate. It has to be part of the practice at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So here, the wrong idea is that you can do it once or twice, or it's not suitable for continuous practice, or that you should that it's not. It's something worthy of meditation, but just not necessarily to do anything but in the beginning. So that's the doubt that dispelled. It shows how it's important throughout the course of all practices.
Oh yeah, that job compared the la tenchoa.
So now we've gone through the 3 points that are made on understanding the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death. The first, the point of great meaning, the great meaning behind cultivation. The second point is that it is the gateway to all virtue and excellence. And then the third point that's made of dispelling any misconceptions or negating misconceptions.
Oh yeah, that
Thank you very much. It went well. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings on this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traversed the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life, precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denrona.
Oh yeah.